Thank you for coming. It's a slightly different format for those who are used to coming here than before with the theatre style, but that's good. The topic for this morning is strategic planning, but I want to break it down into a couple of parts. I actually want to take a step back and just talk about what strategy first, to get a sense of what strategy in actual fact consists of, why we have strategy, almost the role and the purpose of strategy, then roll that forward in the strategic business planning. In other words, a process which may allow you to build a strategy and how you do that. So we're going to break it into a couple of parts. The first section is going to be talking about strategy and discussing strategy and unpacking some of the thoughts and the concepts and hopefully getting everyone on the same page as to what strategy is and why it's important and what it may look like. Then in the second part, we'll go through, so how do I actually create that? What are the types of things I need to look at? And what would a typical process look like? And when I mean a typical process, the process which is actually going to get you to where you need to be, as distinct from what we may be used to. So let's just start with that first question. What actually is strategy and what's it look like? How do you know one when you trip over it? What is strategy? What's our thoughts? One of the key roles of directors on a board is to, in actual fact, create and develop the strategy. The role of the CEO and the management team, in theory, is to assist in that, question mark, depending on how you relate to your CEO and management team, and to deliver that strategy. But what actually is it they're doing? Yeah, just speak, don't you? Game plan, goals. So you've got two things coming out of that. One, you're talking about the goals, and the other one, you got the expression of the game plan, which to some extent is how we may get to the goals. Yeah, other thoughts? If you go and study strategic management theory, there's pages and pages and pages and pages of definitions of what strategy is as everyone tries to create a new definition which is slightly different to everyone else, because you have something slightly different if you're going to get published. But what do you think your strategy is in your organisation? If you go away to a strategic planning session, which you probably all do, sometimes annually, sometimes for some reason it's only every 3 years or 5 years, but what is it you expect to do when you go away, and what do you expect to come back with, and what do you expect to happen with that? Yeah, please.
It's how you're going to respond to external environment challenges.
Yeah. So it's about the external environment. And you use the word, they're also challenges. Yep. So my game plan, as I'm going towards my goals, I need to take account of this external environment and the challenges. Yeah. And there's all sorts of tools which kick around, which allow you to look at these things. Yeah. What else?
What about competition if you're in existing businesses?
Yep. Competition. You can describe them as part of your external environment. You can put them separate. Your external environment can be technology, all sorts of things in there. Government intervention, government regulation, global economy stuff, GFCs. What else? There's a couple of key, yep, please. Yeah, so things which are new. I'll just put down new services, products follows, or before. But we're missing a couple of key things. Structure. What's structure? What do you mean by structure?
Staff, capital expenditure requirements, corporations taking over, mergers, acquisitions, whatever you need to get to.
Okay, so structure for you is a bit of some of the things I'll need to do about dollars, M&A, those sorts of things, to in actual fact execute my game plan and to get to my goals, if we keep using that language. While that word structure is up there, what else can it mean? Yeah. Sorry?
It means in terms of how you compete.
Yeah, unpack that a bit more for me. What's that mean?
So I guess you look at the market, look at what you're not so good at,
Yeah.
and you organise your resources to compete.
Yeah, that's a bit of your game plan, isn't it? To some extent, how you're going to compete. Yeah. There's another thing I'm looking for in the word structure. What about if I whack the word organisation before it? What's the role of organisational structure in strategy? You've touched on it. We've circled around it. What actually is it? Who's going to deliver your strategy? So when you talk about structure, often what you're talking about is the actual organisation. And yes, unfortunately, that means people. So can you actually have a strategy without having regard to the organisation which is going to deliver it? Well, you can, and many boards do, but it doesn't necessarily get particularly far. And one of I'll use the word problems, one of the challenges for a board which is quite remote from the organisation, in other words, they're not seeing it on a day-to-day basis and not touching the customers on a day-to-day basis, are they close enough to actually develop a real strategy? Or are they going to have some nice overarching framework which really is not going to empower the organisation in any way? So that can be a challenge. There's a whole argument about which comes first. There's a whole argument about which comes first. So let's take a simple analogy and just unpack that a bit. I don't follow football, born and bred in Melbourne. I think I've been to one football match, so I apologise to everyone who follows football. If I have a team and my team goes out there and is competing each week, why don't they win each and every week? Surely they should. So why can't they go out week after week after week and just win every match they go into? Well, they're playing against another team. The other team may be better. They're playing in a different ground. The ground conditions may be better. They may have an off week where in actual fact they have just not got their act together. They're not working as a cohesive team. For some reason or another, their minds are all over the place. There could be all sorts of reasons as to why one week they won and next time they come and play the same team, they lose. So what do you actually do with that team week after week after week after week? They train. They try and work more closely as a team. They try and coordinate more. They try and keep their morale, their vision, their purpose, their intent strong. They try and keep their motivation strong. They try and go out in the field every day and play a game which allows them to win. Jump back into your business. Every day, your organisation, your team are going out and competing in the marketplace in changing environments, and they're seeking to win. You know, yes, we have a strategy. Yes, our football team has a strategy, but delivering that strategy is something which is very different. Yes, we have a strategy for our business. The actual delivery of that strategy day after day is something which is very different. So the question actually comes up, do I actually set my strategy and then just create a structure to deliver it? So in a North American MBA context, go out and do your research, get all your data together, create your strategy, it's all analytics, now just roll out and do the strategy. In a European context, come back, look at the organisation you've got, look at the capability of the people, build the capability of the people, try and create a direction for them and allow them to go out and allow that strategy to be delivered, but expect it to change as they begin to do it. So there becomes this entire, not argument, but chicken and egg. Can I in actual fact develop a strategy without having regard to the organisation? Should my strategy be built around the organisation so I can in actual fact can deliver it? And the reality is you're ending up with a circle. I need to constantly build my organisation so I can deliver my strategy. And it can only deliver a strategy which it's capable of delivering. So I can build, and you'll hear this time and time again, I can have the best strategy anyone has ever thought of, but if I can't deliver it, it's useless. And therefore the formulation of a strategy and passing it over to someone to implement is pretty much doomed to failure because you don't have that connection going well. So one of the things when we talk about strategy and we talk about the game plan is we actually need to understand who's delivering it and the capability of delivering it. And therefore, as we talk about the way you develop a strategy and we talk about the organisation, it is fundamental and critical to the creation of your strategy. If I don't understand the capability of the organisation to deliver, if I'm not reinvesting in that organisation so it can deliver, the strategy won't go anywhere. That's the first part. There's another key element which is sort of, in one sense, missing. So recognising this, whichever way you express it, is important. What's the other thing we're actually missing? There's a couple of other things which are actually missing here as we talk about what strategy is. So if you go back and look at the work of Peter Drucker and you sort of distill and I can't remember the author who actually did this, and it's an interesting statement. He turned around and said, from Drucker's work, the purpose of business is in actual fact not to make a profit. The purpose of business is to meet the needs of a community. It needs to earn a profit so it actually can reinvest in itself to meet the needs of that community even further and better. Dividends, interest, all these things are just the cost of doing business to allow me to meet the needs of a community. So if we put that into a modern context and put a modern language in it, we would say that competition today, and that actually says competition today is very much about value. Whose value? Customer value. And what is customer value premised upon? Need. We actually didn't say strategy is about meeting the needs of my customer better than anyone else. And strategy is in actual fact about meeting the needs of my customer better than anyone else and creating the organisation which can deliver that strategy, in other words, meet those needs. If I forget about my customer and just keep going, then I have a problem. So competition today is around identifying and understanding the needs of the customer, the value that represents, and that's where my growth comes from. That's where I need to compete. So my strategy has to be clearly focused on delivering customer value. So sometimes you'll see strategies, and I always use this as a silly example, so excuse me if it sort of offends anyone, but you'll see sometimes in the not-for-profit sector, someone will turn around and say, I want to be an employer of choice. This is sort of an older language. I want to be an employer of choice. Okay, that's fine as an overarching strategy, but what are you actually meaning by that? And if you actually dig down through that, there is actually an intent which is far more purposeful regarding the ability to meet the needs of a customer rather than this, I just want to be an employer of choice. So you've got to be very careful that when you're creating, crafting strategies, they're actually moulded and articulated in a way which impact directly customer need. So strategy is about what? It's about goals, it's about the game plan, it's about understanding the external environment and the challenges, it's about understanding the people who's going to deliver it, it's very much about competition. It is about customer value. And where do new services and new products come from? Meeting new needs, creating new needs. So when you get into the language of value innovation, blue ocean, this sort of language, what you're really talking about is crafting and creating needs which are not presently being met in the way you can meet them. And the classic example, which is an easy one, are they still here? Cirque du Soleil? They're still here? So how much do you pay now for a ticket? Who went this time? 200, 250, 200 it must be at the back, is it? 250, 350 is just sort of you come forward. So if you go back to when I was a kid, you wouldn't be paying $200 for a ticket to get into the circus, would you? Not at all. $200 would have been several weeks' pay, probably. But there is a totally different value proposition. It's not a circus, it's a performance. It has acrobats, it has singing, it has dancing, it has a movie theme going through it. It's totally different to what it used to be. So they have redefined what that value proposition is and have engaged people in a different way, and people will now pay for it. The interesting question for them is, where to now? What is the next evolution of that? Can they actually find another evolution, or they just mature it out and will die as interest dies off? So we start with simply an understanding of strategy. So when you think about, I need to develop a strategic plan, what you're actually saying is, I need to go through a process which is going to allow me to develop a strategy which will allow me to achieve my goals. It has to be about improving customer value. It's going to be in a competitive environment. I have to be conscious of who's going to deliver it, and somehow I need to mould all of this together in a way which is going to move the organisation. We use a very simple definition. We simply say strategy is about how you're going to compete. This is how you're going to compete. Compete to do what? To achieve your goals. But goals are pretty simplistic. It goes beyond that. And we'll talk about some of the language about vision and purpose. Because there's some things which you need to build into your strategy which energises and powers your organisation and allows it to move a lot more purposefully and strongly than just saying, here is my strategic plan. So that's some of the things we're going to walk through this morning. We use a language, and I'll just touch on this very quickly because a number of you have heard us talk about this, of if you're thinking about growing and developing a business, it should be a great business. So we talk about good, better, best, great. And a great business, people will often turn around and say, but how can you be, there's only good, better, best, because once you're best, there's nothing beyond that. Surely there's nothing beyond that. So we use a very simple analogy, which is take the athlete, the Olympic champion, who year after year after year is winning medals, setting new targets, setting new records, and is stepping out. After 10 years, they'll be recognised as great. They're one of the greats. They're constantly just setting records of people who are seeking to achieve. So in terms of the business you are building and growing, do you want it just to be good? Do you want it to be a bit better than anyone else? Do you just want it to be best in sort of the area you're in, or do you want it to be recognised one of the greats? And great doesn't necessarily mean in the business context fame. Great means the way you perform. So we have a very simple language which builds around this, and it simply says as follows. A great business is one that does exceptional things day after day and whose owners, employees and customers thrive in the benefits. Now, to me, the key words are exceptional, day after day, and thrive. People actually enjoy working there. People actually enjoy owning and running the company. People actually enjoy engaging with the business. And in our definition, in today's market, if you're not exceptional, if you're not great, you're really not going to get the rewards. You're going to be busting your guts the same as everyone else, but you're not going to get the rewards that that extra focus and that extra step will allow you to do. So people who achieve that level of greatness, you can say, have a DNA in them, but they actually have a focus, a clear focus on what they're seeking to achieve, a single-minded focus on what they're seeking to achieve, and they go out and they do it day after day. They have a clear strategy, which is articulated, and they know it. The benefits, highly profitable, throws off free cash flow, growing compounding capital value, customers love it, employees are passionate, owners thrive and fulfilled, continue opportunities, delivers greater value day after day. These are the outcomes we believe a great business delivers, but you actually start from the bottom. This is where you begin to build. If you begin to deliver value day after day, then what you're actually doing is you're finding opportunities. The owners will suddenly begin to see their business is growing, developing, and so it goes up the line. If you start at profit, you get nowhere. If I keep chasing the dollars and not focus on the value I deliver, the profit will always be a bit elusive. It's the old, if I'm chasing cost reductions and have no recognition what it does to customer value, I go out the door backwards pretty quickly. And we think there's 8 things you need to do to, in actual fact, achieve this level. Customer needs, think and act strategically, make your products easy to buy, understand the numbers, drive your organisational performance, continually grow your business, expand globally, plan your succession. The series which we're going through now is running through these topics. 3 weeks ago, we did need. No, 3 weeks did, we did the overarching, the whole 8 together, and we're just progressively working through these. So today it's about thinking and acting strategically. So if I just pause there, and I come back to what we've talked about there, what do we actually mean by thinking and acting strategically? If I think strategically, what does it actually mean? So? Bigger picture.
Yeah, so we're looking down on sort of helicopter sort of view of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I could also be standing in the middle of it. I understand the implications of my actions. I think if I'm thinking strategically, I understand the implications of what I'm doing and I know where it's taking me to. And you get tied up with what's a strategy and what's a tactic, and it depends on where you are and what you're doing. But the reality is I understand the connections, the implications of what I'm doing. And I have a vision of where that's taking me to. And vision, to me, means an image, a picture, as distinct from I have a vision. The funny one I always remember is we went into this company which had up their mission, I think it was their mission and vision statement, and it was to achieve turnover 120 million. So we sat down with them and said, so what's your turnover? 150 million? I think you'd outlive that a bit and maybe need to move on. So thinking and acting strategically is stage 1. You actually want an organisation, you actually want your key leaders, but you actually want the people working with the organisation to think and act strategically. What are the implications of what I'm about to do in the bigger picture? What is it I should be focusing on? We actually believe there's 3 levels of sort of growth in an organisation. The first one is actually people begin to think strategically. They actually understand there's a direction, they actually understand the implications of going there and why they're going there, and they're positively acting to go in that direction. Second stage, once they understand that, is they begin to say to themselves, and I now know how to grow my business. Because when you talk about growth, you're talking about a very clear sense of what you're doing, but also you're talking about compounding. How many organisations go out and I tried that, and I tried that, and I tried that, and I tried that, and they haven't learnt from any of the things they tried, and after 10 years, they're still trying things rather than saying, and everything I did, whether it worked or failed, I've taken 3 steps forward. Everything is on a path and everything is compounding. So I understand strategic thinking, and I do think strategically. I understand how to grow a business so nothing is wasted. And the third level is I understand how to compete. And compete is building that team which can go out every day and win. In actual fact, they don't have to go out every day because they're always constantly ahead of everyone. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So as we kick forward and you begin to think about, okay, where to from here? I have a sense of what strategy is. I understand what you're talking about in terms of great business. The reason why these become important is you start off with one question. What does success look like to you? I have a strategy. It's to achieve goals, but it has to be a little bit more than that. What actually does success look like to you? What actually is my strategic plan taking me towards? Is it a great business? Is it something else? What does that actually look like? Do I see it? Do my fellow directors see it? Does the shareholder group see it? Does my management team see it? Do all my employees see it? And it's an interesting question. If you turn around and say, what's a success look like? There's normally a stutter and a stumble, and you come out with dollars first, rather than necessarily the type of organisation which allows you to earn the dollars. So what does success actually look like? If you don't have a clear vision of that, then I'm not too sure what you're actually building. I'm not too sure what you're building. And I'll give you a simple example. Two businesses. One a few years ago and one more recent. I'll do the one a few years ago. This is a company which actually was part of a global group, and they were into furniture, specifically outdoor furniture. And they had a session which had about the same number of people in a room sitting out in a motel somewhere in the eastern suburbs, I think it was, from memory. All guys, one girl. And we're into about 15 to 20 minutes in the start of what was going to be a 2-day planning session for them. And we're struggling with the question, and the question was, what do we actually do in our business? It's a funny question to start with. What do you do in your business? We're part of a global group, it's pretty large, we're the Australian operations. We basically import and distribute this furniture. That was the story. So they describe themselves in a certain way. We import and distribute furniture. It's part of a global group. Okay. Silence. Is it good furniture? Yeah. Silence. Why is it good furniture? Well, if you actually, and then the technical people came into it, they said the thickness of the aluminium, the welding we use, the fabric we use, the construction which we use is the best in the world. No one comes anywhere near us. Did you get a good price for it? No. Being absolutely decimated. Cheap imitations are coming in, copying what we do, and we're just not able to maintain the prices which we've got. That is our problem. How do people know that your chair is different to someone else's chair? Silence. Is there a label? Is there a tag? Is there something which hangs off which says my chair is better than anyone else's? Silence. Slight voice in the background. Yeah, we are thinking about doing something like that. Do you actually train the sales staff in David Jones, Myers, all these places to do this? Yeah, well, we haven't done that particularly well. And so this story goes on and unpacks. And towards the end of it, the one girl in the room, who happens to be the marketing person, says, all of that is quite correct. However, there's one thing which we're forgetting, why people actually buy our chairs. People buy our chairs because not only are we very good at manufacturing, but being part of a global group, we have the best media of anyone. The way our furniture is displayed, the imagery we put around it, the fabrics we choose, the colours we choose, no one can match us. They're always 6 to 9 months behind us as they're trying to copy and catch up with what we're doing. People buy our furniture because of the environment it creates for them. They see that and say, I want that setting in my home because I want that romance, that passion, that energy. I want the happy family. I want all those things. We sell good furniture, but we actually sell a lifestyle. And until we understand that, we will never sell well. What business are they in? They're actually in the business of importing and distributing furniture? Yeah. Does that actually translate into any customer value? No. Or they in actual fact importing and distributing furniture which allows people to have a certain lifestyle and to bring something into their house which will create something for them. So that was for them a turning point. There was another company we did recently, and they actually came up with an expression which is no Kodak moments. So they want no Kodak moments. So what's a Kodak moment? Extinction? Yeah. But they had a very similar story, and their story was, oh, we do this very well. We're importers and distributors. What are we looking for? More products to import and distribute. What's happening to you? We're being squeezed to death. We've got the manufacturers on one side, we've got Bunnings on the other side, we're in between, we're trying to get air. We're doing better this year because 3 of our competitors have gone out of business. We're sort of last man standing at the present time. What value do you deliver? We're importers and distributors. Now, there could be a value proposition in being an importer and distributor, but actually need to build a bit of a shield around that to strengthen it. So when you begin to turn around and say, what are you building? Then it really becomes a sense of what's my business about and where is the value and what may success look like. So in the company which imported and distributed the furniture, success could look like if you want to get just, if you know, the husband's sitting around at the weekend, turning around and saying, if you want to bring happiness to your family, go buy this furniture. It's probably the wife's still doing it, but I put the husband's in it to get a bit of a quality in there. That then will be success because people say, that's the value of this furniture. It just changes the way we interact. So it's an important question. Moving on before we run out of time and I even get to the meat of it. The second thing you've got to think about is how in actual fact am I going to compete? Strategy is all about how I'm going to compete. What does competing effectively look like? What does competing effectively look like? If you're sitting there in a board meeting, you're sitting with your management team and you're saying, I want to be competing effectively. I want an organisation which outcompetes anyone else. What could that look like? I get my sales target. Wow. I maintain my profit. Yep. If I'm outcompeting anyone else, what am I doing? Yeah. Yeah, having greater market share would be some evidence. Creating a new market would be more evidence. Continually stepping out from everyone else and setting what the new standard is what competition is about. So what's a great business? It's one which no one can actually catch because they just keep reinventing themselves and developing new products and stepping forward. So if you go back into the early days when Apple started to bring out their iPods and those sorts of things, they were creating markets and business models which no one was seeing and they weren't catching up to. So if I'm going to compete, I actually don't have to look behind me and say, what's their price? I've got a discount. What have they got? I've got to do this. What are they doing? I better do that. You actually just don't worry about them because you're just moving forward. How do you think you may do that? How do you think you may outcompete anyone? Where does your focus need to be? What was Cirque du Soleil? A reinvention of an offering which just shifted everyone away. What was the iPod when it came out and iTunes and these sorts of things? What was Amazon when it came out? A total new means of delivery. Meeting what in actual fact was not a need at that stage. The desire to be able to instantly download a book. But now it's just habit. I saw it, I want it, I've got it. Saw it on TV, someone's talking about this book, I've gone online, I now have it. Before, I saw the book, sounds great, let me go to my bookstore, they'll order it. 8 weeks later in Australia, it may land here. That's all shifted. Music, the same thing. What's that song? I like that. Shazam, bang, download, I have it. Or what are we into now? Spotify? Am I up to date? Is it Spotify? Have we moved on past Spotify? No, it's Spotify, okay. So competing is actually putting yourself in a position where you just begin to continue to move forward. Now you can see the way we're talking about strategy is actually shifting you to another level. It's not just about having a strategic plan which is operational, which says for the next 3 years we will do A, B, C, D, E. It's saying all of those things, but it's saying, and how do we stop fighting with these guys and just get further and further ahead of them? It's about the structure, it's about the organisation, it's about the people, it's about getting the correct focus. It's not about command and control, it's about something else. We also want our strategic plan very much to account for changing seasons. Nothing stands still. The seasons are changing, needs are changing, the environment's changing. All those things are changing. We need actually a strategic plan which creates an organisation which actually can deal with the changing season. As I'm sitting here today, do I know what the market's going to be like in 6 months' time? Absolutely no idea. Who knows what the market's going to be like next week? Could the entire market collapse on us? Is there something out there which I have no vision, no knowledge of? Yeah, quite possibly. Whatever segment I'm in, quite possibly. I actually need an organisation which can respond to that. I need a strategic plan which builds an organisation which can respond to that. I need to have some adaptability and flexibility. So my question is, does my strategic plan allow for changing seasons? Does it allow me to adapt and respond to that? I don't want to end up this way. I don't want to end up there. So my strategic plan is very much ensuring I don't end up there in a way which allows the organisation to grow and develop. Yeah? So do you now have a slightly different context of what a strategic plan is? Yeah, it's about goals, it's about the game plan, it's very much about customers and value, it's about allowing for changing environment, it's about competing, it's about the people in the organisation, but it's about actually shifting my organisation well ahead of everyone else so I don't end up there. And how many organisations we know end up there? Because they lose that ability to see where the future is and to that momentum. So an organisation which does not stagnate. A couple of few points just to close up in this section. We're not going to spend any time on this, and it's quite blurred so you can't see it. There is a model which we'll talk about in another session, which we talk about the competitive engine. There's actually an engine which drives your businesses, drives your organisations, which allows you to do what we've just talked about. It is a combination of the way, let's say, leadership, believe it or not, engages with the employees around a purpose and uses vision and culture to actually develop the strategy with a customer focus and capability. So there's actually a model, a framework we've got which we can unpack. You will get copies of these slides as well, so you'll be able to see that a bit better. But that's for another day. But strategy is about making sure we're building the type of organisation and focusing on things which allow us to achieve this. Just to finish off, strategy is also about this. It's finding the answers, but it's finding the right answers. And often I don't know what the question is, but I actually need to create an organisation which can find the answers. And there's all sorts of answers: strategic, financial, organisation, commercial. So my strategy has got to be thinking about the implications of the organisation and finding answers amongst all the questions. To some extent, you actually want your strategy to answer the questions you don't know about. And you'll see one of the things we talk about is creating simple guiding principles. So the simple guiding principles tell me what I do. They also tell me by default what I don't do. And often in an organisation, knowing what you don't do is what your strategy is about. So think about your strategy. Does it answer the questions which I know may come up and I want people to have the right answer for? It's about balancing the sort of the desire and the need to get some control, have some rules, some restrictions. You certainly don't want stagnation, and to create an organisation which is about innovation, passion, learning and development. So your strategy to some extent is trying to give a direction, but at the same time trying to grow the organisation in a way which allows it to emerge. And you've got to be very clear about that. So as you create formulation and you say, this is what we're going to do, you've got to be very careful you don't lock everyone down, so actually what you need to do can't come out and doesn't emerge. If I was to summarise strategy, I would say strategy is about direction, alignment and focus. This is where we're going to. This is where we're heading to. This is about purpose. This is our intent. This is the type of organisation we've got. This is our direction. Let's get everything which we do focusing in the right direction. That is about alignment. And these are the things we're going to do: direction, alignment and focus. And I'll just give you a very silly diagram to explain this. What is there? A blank page. Okay, now there's a line. Typically, the way I think of businesses, this is my business. This is my job. And often it feels as if I'm in actual fact dragging, pushing it up the hill. And often it feels like I'm the only one who's doing it. There's no one else there. Maybe I have someone helping me. And my job basically is to drag the business up the hill. That's how it feels like often. And then you have all your senior management team and your workers are sort of standing around the side, watching, helping, not. You have some who like to simply say, this is good, let me go for the ride. You've got some who actually will physically almost block you from what you're doing, and you've got many who will almost off reservation. This is typically what happens. This is where, in actual fact, I don't have any direction, alignment, and focus. I'm trying to get the organisation moving. I'm actually trying to get everyone to work with me in a very sensible and cohesive way to move the business to where I need it to move to. They don't understand where we're going to, they don't understand where they fit into the picture, and they don't understand what they should be doing. Your strategic plan, your strategy has got to communicate this quite simply. If you can do that, you end up with a very, very different picture. That's what you want. You actually want everyone working to move the business up in a cohesive way. You want them working as a team. You want them being innovative, creative, passionate, and outthinking you. Your strategy is about one team, one purpose, one vision, one culture, a passion in what we do. So the question I would ask, does your strategic plans, which you've got and the ones you think about creating, do that? Do they actually articulate the type of organisation you want and where you need to move them to? Otherwise, what I'm giving you is a checklist of things to do. I'm giving you some overarching framework. I'm just saying, just go do it. It's not going to achieve it. Strategic plans can come in different shapes and sizes. That's Salvation Army, 130 years old. That's their strategic plan in Australia. This is called Darkest England. You can't see it particularly well. A couple of years ago, what we would call the CEO of the Salvation Army was in here. He put this up and said, we don't have a strategic plan. 2 weeks later, when I was with him, I said, you do have a strategic plan. This actually tells everyone what their role is. It tells you what your purpose is, tells you action taken, tells you your vision, talks about your mission. Everyone in the Salvation Army knows exactly why they exist and what they're seeking to do and how they go about it. It's revamped and they use it. Here's a strategic plan. For those who play with Lego, here is a strategic plan. It actually maps out what their strategy is and all the external environment around them and how they're going to relate and connect with it. Lego Serious Play actually has a 2-day program where you actually craft a strategy. And you turn around and say, why would I do that? What happens when I build something with my hands? Do I engage a different part of my mind to sitting at a table like this and listening to someone talk? So you actually bring a management team together and you say, okay, we're actually going to build the organisation, we're going to build the environment, we're going to craft our strategy, get off your bum, stand up and let's start building it. And once you get past that initial skill, you actually end up with a 3-dimensional sort of model which has a lot of metaphors built through it. Don't know if you can see it here. I think there's an elephant. Somewhere around there's a dead horse lying in the model. That's a strategic plan. Often we think of strategic plans as being maps and things like that. They can come in many different shapes and sizes. So when you're thinking what your strategy looks like, the old 20-page document, which is done every 3 to 5 years, which goes up there, is not it. We were at an organisation 3 weeks ago. No, not here, 3 weeks ago, I think it was, on a weekend. They have a strategic plan until 2017, they thought they should revisit it. Yeah. Well, you just get over the fact you have a 5-year strategic plan. There can't be any such thing. The markets are changing so quickly. I have a strategy which is seeing me forward, but strategies are dynamic, they're continuous. I can't turn around and say, well, it goes for another 2 years yet. Should we actually be meeting to look at it? Your business is going backwards. You're unprofitable. You're losing customers. You better do something. So you've got to be very careful about what you think a strategic plan is. Here's a quick summary. The strategic plan tells me how I'll compete. It's going to tell me how I'm going to achieve success. Goals, mission, vision, that last word which has been chopped off is purpose. In actual fact, it guides me through changing seasons. It actually ensures I'm not going to die as an organisation, which I think is probably a good thing. It shows me how I'm going to grow stronger every day. It provides answers to questions. It supports innovation and doesn't seek to control too much. It delivers direction, alignment and focus. And most importantly, it underpins capital value. So while my strategy actually shows me how I'm going to compete, what does that equal? How does it equal capital value? Why would my strategy underpin my capital value? What's capital value? How would accountants calculate capital value? discounted cash flow, capitalisation, maintainable earnings. What are they actually looking for? What actually is the future looking like? I'll define capital value as being the ability to earn an enduring income. The ability to earn an enduring income. What's my strategy articulate? My ability to earn an enduring income. And if you think about it in terms of the actual structure, the organisation I'm building, the capability of that organisation to continue to exist. Your strategy is fundamental to your capital value. Very much so. Any thoughts, any questions so far? I know I've been sort of moving through and hitting you reasonably fast.
Yeah, I don't think you can have in an organisation I don't think you want everyone to be an innovator.
No.
I mean, you've got to balance
Yep.
creativity, energy, drive, control. But I've been in shows where everyone from the natural capitalist innovator actually a bit of chaos. So focus is important, but I don't agree that innovation is important, but I don't think everybody necessarily has to be an innovator.
So your organisation has to be innovative,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean that everyone innovates and no one does anything. But it is that balance within your organisation. So if you have no one thinking about where you're going and where to next, and is not creating something, and they're not creating anything, then you have a problem. Yep.
And capital value to me is to what's the business worth?
Yep. What's the business worth?
Improving every day.
Yeah. So what's the business worth?
What's the business worth? What you can sell it for?
Yeah. So ultimately, what the business is worth, the real test is what someone will pay for it. In forming that view, they're going to say, and what do I think this business is going to do in the future? So it becomes a little bit circular, but comes down that foundation. Sorry?
We're in business to enhance our total value.
Yeah. It's a chicken and egg expression there as well. I'm in business to make a profit. My profit allows me to build a capital value. How do I make the profit which allows me to build the capital value? I need to meet the needs of my customers. Yeah. So it's which way you put first. Here's 4 questions we're not going to ponder on, but I just want to pose these up. These 4 questions are the essence of your strategy. If you can answer these 4 questions consistently across your management team and your board, you really have your strategy. What do you do in your business? I'm a distributor. I create a certain lifestyle for people. What are you better at than anyone else? You're actually better than anyone else? If you're not, then how are you actually going to compete effectively? Why do your customers keep coming back to you? If you can't answer it, then you're not sure what value you're delivering, and then you tie all that together and say, what value do you deliver? If you give those 4 questions to your senior management team and ask them to answer it, you'll find out very quickly whether in actual fact you have a strategy. And in 80% of the cases, 90% of the cases, you won't have a strategy because they won't articulate it in a way which gives you that clarity. So if I actually can't describe what business I'm in a way which actually shows value, if I actually don't know what I'm actually really good at and what keeps me ahead of anyone else, if I actually don't know why my customers are with me every day, if I can't wrap all that together in a value statement, then I wonder if I know where I'm going to. Apart from I'm here and I exist and I'm in business and yeah, I'm okay. I just tossed this in here because this is another example. This actually is a diagram of how the organisation functions, but it could also be seen as a strategic plan. I have 2 sources of raw materials. Basically, I have 2 manufacturing plants which are strategically positioned in relation to where my raw material suppliers are. I overlay a quality control process in it. I, in actual fact, have global hubs which I've established, which I ship my goods out to in strategic locations. I have 3 ways of entering into the marketplace globally. I don't actually have a good consistency in that, and I need to look at it far more clearly. I need to, in actual fact, improve the intelligence which I'm gathering from the market and bring it back in, because my lead used to be in product innovation, but I've now lost that because I've got too removed from the marketplace. So in actual fact, my focus is to gather intel. I can gather that quite well because I actually have service and repair teams which are working in the marketplace and understand what products are working and what not. But I've never been capturing that particularly well since I've been removed. I'm now capturing that much better, pushing that back into my manufacturing and product development, and then stepping ahead in the marketplace. So this is a plan they actually drew to articulate how we function as an organisation, but it's how we function to deliver the value we deliver. So these things can be drawn quite easily. And I think diagrams like that, even though when you look at it, you go, wow, I don't know what that means. For that organisation who crafted that, that is their guidebook to their strategy. and allows them to focus and invest in what they need to do. So strategic plans don't have to be long and detailed, they can actually be quite succinct and deliberate. Okay, into the meaty stuff. There's actually a little guidebook which we've got, which we'll send out with the slides, which is pretty old, but actually goes through and gives you lots of questions which you can ask as we go through these parts, so we'll kick that out. We see there's 7 key parts which you need to address in strategic planning. History, strategic analysis and thinking, which basically has, it's 1, 2, 3 sections in it. Competitive is competitive landscape, organisation, future, financial valuation, risk and delivery. So it has those parts in it. We're going to go through each one and just talk about those and what they mean. So we see this as a process which you should run to get to your strategy. These are the areas you need to address. And I said the little book we'll send out to you has the questions you can ask. So let's start at the first one. Why would the history of the organisation be important? And the answer's there, but why would the history of an organisation be important?
Relationship with the customers.
Could be the relationship with my customers,
Learning from success and failure.
learning from success and failures,
Reflects the values, the owners, the shareholders.
reflects the values. Why would I be looking at the history of the organisation and why wouldn't I just be looking at the future?
Learning from success and failure.
Yeah, I think you can even distill it down into a far more simple question. If you think of yourself as an individual, and if you think of the fact you're interviewing someone for a job, what I'm actually trying to understand is who you are, what's happened in your life, where were you born, who were your parents, where did you grow up, what life experience have you had, what have you learned, what have you studied, what have you failed, where you've been successful at. Because if I understand who you are, I can understand what you may be capable of. If I understand well the history of the organisation, I actually can stand here today and say, I know where we've been, I have a much better sense of what we're actually capable of doing in the future. And therefore that becomes an important stepping stone for me. And I'll give you a very simple example. An organisation which had been around for 80 odd years, for the last, I think it was 35 odd years, had had what was described by the board as a very autocratic CEO. You could not even walk down the corridor without his permission. That was the language which the senior management team used. Could not even walk down the corridor without his permission. Major heart attack, didn't die, still around, exiting the business. Board comes together, we're going to develop a strategic business plan. We need to shake things up. We're going to become a highly innovative organisation which is going to go out and do all these new and wonderful things. Freeze frame. Wonderful strategy, a senior management team and an organisation which for the last 35 years has not been able to breathe without permission. Are they going to suddenly be able to turn themselves around to become an innovative, open, creative thinking, break the rules, do what you want to type organisation? Probably not. You're going to have a bit of work to shift that. And even if you bring in a new CEO who's like that, he's working with an organisation which has never learned how to do that. They haven't been allowed. So a simple example, but your history tells you who I am today and actually allows me to have a better view of who I need to be or who I could be tomorrow. So your history is where have I come from and how may it impact my ability to go forward. What's an easy way in which you may get a handle on that? You can talk about key events. What are major events which happened in the past and what impact did they have on us? Do you know another very simple way in which you can do it is give everyone a blank sheet of paper and coloured pencils. And you say, can you draw our organisation? A house, a car, an airplane, a boat, a person, draw whatever you want. Because now I've stopped people standing or sitting and talking, they're now having to sketch. And as they begin to sketch and you give them some time to do it, they begin to articulate the character of the organisation. And you'll see some of them are very good pictures, where you'll get people who've got things with 2 heads, 1 arm, half a leg, lopsided, sharks swimming around them, all sorts of things. Because what they're actually doing is expressing to you the way they see the organisation today. So there are very powerful ways in which you can actually extract what everyone sees about the organisation. And then you put them up on the wall and say, this is who we are. Later, you then come back and say, if that's who we are, what needs to change for who we need to be? And it becomes quite good exercises. First step, always start with your history and understand who you are and where you've been and how that may impact. The second part is analysis and thinking. So it's analysis and thinking. It's the two together. In the days of big data and information and grabbing all this data together, that can be very good, but it will not give you the answer you need necessarily on the other side. It's about data and research, but it's about intuition and judgment, and ultimately it's going to be about risk. If everyone could find the answer, then everyone would be extremely successful in business. So it becomes down to judgment. So as you go through this next section, it's about balancing those two together. We think there's three parts you should look at. Three areas you should look at. And think of it this way. What you need to actually do is you need to define your marketplace. So the first part is about defining the marketplace. Where do you play? What actually are the markets you're playing in? What needs are you seeking to satisfy? That could be the services and the products you're delivering, but the value. Who are your customers? What demographics are you doing? What are your price points? What really is underlying value and how may that be opened out? If I can't define my marketplace, if I actually can't draw a boundary around it, and it's not about limiting myself to that boundary, but it's understanding the space I'm playing in, I actually can't even go anywhere because I don't know where I'm going. So organisations turn around and say, oh, my geographical market is the world. Where are you now? Abbotsford? But it's the world. Now, putting online strategies, those things one side, you've got to come back to a realistic statement. Who are your customers? Why do they buy from you? What do you sell? What's your marketplace? Begin to explore that. Once I understand the boundaries of my market, I can actually ask what's influencing it. What is going to be my external environment in the future? What's going to impact it? Define your marketplace, understand what's impacting it. That's the first part. If you don't do that, you actually haven't got a starting point, and you've got to be very careful about statements where people talk about the fact that, oh, it's this, and in reality, when you come back, it's where they may want to go at some time in the future, but you've actually come back. And boundaries in markets are shifting, but it's an important starting point. The second one you then say is competitive landscape. And the competitive landscape basically is turning around and saying to you, having defined the market you're in, who's playing in that market? Who actually are my competitors? What's the game they're playing? And can I outplay them? Who plays in my space? What is the game they play? Who, where, basis competition? Their rules do not have to be my rules. So it's always an interesting exercise. Sit down and say, these are my 5 top competitors. How do they play? Oh, it's about competencies, it's about price, it's about speed of service, it's about product range, it's about this, it's about that. Okay, list all those out, score them. Give them a score out of 10 for how strong and how weak they are. Do the same to yourself. It's a bit of a self-assessment, but that's the way they compete in the marketplace. How do I want to compete? So competitive landscape is basically who I'm playing with. I actually can't even do that unless I've defined my marketplace. The third part then becomes positioning. Positioning is about where I'm going to play. It's about where I'm going to play. My game, my position to use my strengths and their weaknesses, really focus on need and value. Where should I be? So I may turn around and say, if this is my marketplace, I know where everyone else is playing, this is where I'm going to position myself. This is going to be my value proposition, this is my position of strength. Now, of course, that's never static, it's always dynamic. But if I don't have a sense of the market I'm playing in, if I don't have a sense of who's there and where they're strong, then I can't position where I need to be. It always starts with where my strengths are, but often becomes where I need to shift myself to. And that then becomes something which shifts as we go forward. So your strategy really falls from this understanding of my market, my customers, my value, things which are influencing and impacting it, where other people are, and where I need to position myself to have this position of strength. You know, in a language of competitiveness, almost like 1,000 weight. Here I am, there they are, boom. They've got no chance in competing against me. Can I strengthen myself that much? You then get into a game where you turn around and you say, and I'm now going to shift myself to here. I am no longer playing their game, Cirque du Soleil. I have shifted myself outside the game. iTunes, Amazon, iPod. I shifted myself outside their game. Through technology, through redefining customer needs, through rethinking what the value proposition is, I've shifted myself. They will have to play catch up. So your strategic analysis and thinking is very much about understanding your market, understanding who's playing in it, understanding what their strengths are in the game they're playing, understanding where I'm good at and positioning that. And getting an absolute focus on that. Come back to the 4 questions. What's the business I'm in? What am I really good at? Why do my customers keep coming back? And what value do I deliver? If I actually can't do this and move myself towards that, you're struggling. So you can now see that we're talking about strategy in a way which is maybe shifting us away from our comfort zones. We're now beginning to have to stretch ourselves a bit and not think about what's always worked for me in the past, but think about what's going to work for me in the future and where I'm going to move myself to. This is not hard. This is not hard. The company we're working with a couple of weeks ago, No Kodak Moments, which had a team of 33 they had brought in from around the country, whose CEO does not believe in strategic planning, but whose board said, we do, we're going backwards, $200 million, $230 million in turnover and nothing on the bottom line, we need to do something about this. They actually had a day, 2 days, which at the end of it, he had shifted himself, but the entire management team had come together and had answered these questions very well and had mapped out for them a plan of change for the next 12 months and a plan for the next 3 to 5 years as the new products and new things they're going to move in and where they're going to shift them to based upon what they do well. So I find that when you engage a management team with the right questions, the answers are actually there. Often they've just not been asked in the right way. So the next part you go on to, remember, history, strategic analysis and thinking. Next part very much is the organisation. What's the organisation I need to deliver my competitive strategy? Purpose, vision, culture, values, structure. Structure is not organisational structure. This is my title, this is my position. Structure is like that diagram I had up before. Raw materials, manufacturing plants, distribution hubs, into the marketplace. That is what, in actual fact, my structure looks like. And there's an old article in, I think it was in Harvard, Organ Graphics, which talks about how to actually build these models. I understand my history, I understand my market and where I'm going to be. I'm now looking at the type of organisations I'm going to build to allow me to deliver that strategy. And again, the book it will kick out to you gives you a whole series of questions you can ask your management team to help you pull these things out from them. Next is the future. I understand my history, I understand where I'm going to position myself, I understand the type of organisation I think I need to build. Freeze frame. Let's test this a bit. Let's restate how I'm actually going to compete in the marketplace, and we use the language of competitive posture. The game we're going to play, that's my competitive posture. It's the way I'm going to play this game. Let me test that against what's happened in the past. What are some really key things which happen in the market? And if this is where I was positioned, would I have survived that and how well would I have done? Now let me think of all these things which could happen in the future. Again, scenarios. Let me test it against those. How well does that competitive posture stand up? Adjust it, amend it, adapt it, articulate it clearly, and then turn around and say, if this is how I'm going to compete in the market, what are the basic rules I need to follow? What are the basic rules I need to follow? So you turn around and you begin to say, the company we're working with a couple of weeks ago, they started to think about their basic rules. And their basic rules started off saying, we are distributors and wholesalers, but we have to find a value. So it was a question. So their basic rule was, we are distributors and wholesalers, but I have to find a value. Because they saw no value in what they did which could not be replaced at a price point. So you begin to establish guiding principles which begin to create a shell for you. So their shell started to become, we'll only now begin to identify and bring in products where we in actual fact have exclusivity. Very small step, but now they're going to create a shell. So our guiding principle is only products in which we can have exclusivity. They went on to the next stage. We are now going to, because they've actually got some substance behind them, we're now going to engage with research partners to develop our own products. So they're actually shifting from a distributor into a manufacturing role. In partnership is where they're shifting to with some others. The future is just an important step. History, the market, how I'm going to compete, the type of organisation, test that against the future, crunch your numbers. Freeze frame, do the sums make sense? Can we afford it? Is the return on investment, return of assets, which way we express that, acceptable? Budget for it. When you create a strategic plan, what's going to drop out of that is your amended budget. It's no use creating a strategic plan and several months later you create a budget which has got no connection with it. If you don't budget for what's in your strategic plan, what happens to your strategic plan? Nothing. And quite often there is a disconnect. I've done my strategic plan in March. Yeah, when we come to June, July, we'll think about putting in the budget. No. Recast your budget so you know you can actually act upon your strategic plan. Unless I can fund it, it doesn't exist. Unless I can fund it, it doesn't exist. These are what I call the ticks. Financial validation, right. Second tick, risk. What are the risks? Do we understand them? Are they acceptable? How do we mitigate them? So what are we now doing which is going to change my risk profile? Am I happy with that? Yes, no, can I mitigate it? If I can't, then again I need to revisit. So you can find you're cycling back and adjusting your strategies as you're trying to get the numbers to work and you're understanding what risks are acceptable to you. Last one, delivery. What will it take? What does it impact? Do I actually have a goal achievement plan? And this becomes a bit of a mechanical task where you begin to turn around and say, if this is my strategy, now let me begin to unpack this. How does it impact my distribution, my production, my HR, my finance, my management team, my brand? And you begin to understand the impact in all the different areas, and then you begin to say, so how do we roll this out, and how in actual fact are we going to deliver this strategy in a cohesive way? And in our language, we say you need to develop a goal achievement plan, which at a board level may be a 2-page document which may have 3 to 5 goals on it, and it's articulated over a minimum of a 12 months to a 2-year period in quarterly steps, which says, in this quarter, these are the things which need to happen. In this quarter, these are the things which need to happen to deliver on that strategic plan. Underlying that will tear down, but at that board level, I want to know what my 3 to 5 strategies are. I want to know why they're important, compelling reason. I want to know the specific outcome I'm expecting, articulate in a way where it can be ticked off, and I want to know the steps I'm going to do to deliver that, not in a silly way. 12 months ago, we came across an organisation which had gone up to Sydney, had their strategic session. They came back with an action plan which was 50 A4 pages typed. No way in the next 12 months were they going to deliver 50 A4 typed pages of ticks. Too detailed, too silly. 1 to 2 pages, board level, I can focus and make sure the change is occurring. 7 steps: history, analysis and thinking, which is about the market, the competitive landscape, positioning, making sure I've got the organisation to deliver it, making sure I actually pause and think about the future to see it's going to have some robustness, it's going to give me the direction I need, check the sums, check the risk, and work out how I'm actually going to make it happen. If I don't do this, I have no strategy. It is about ultimately delivery. So until I've worked out that, none of this is complete. And this is why often you can get that circling around. Do not formulate and leave implementation to someone else. They are one in the same. They are one in the same. So the question which you have to answer is, how would you develop a strategic business plan? Now, how would you develop a strategic business planning? Too many letters in there, isn't there? How would you develop a strategic business plan? So all the things we've talked about, what sort of a process would you go through? The process we'll typically say is decide who's going to be around the table. It can be 10, it can be 20. We've done 30, 35. You break them out into groups, depends how big the company is. Yes, it's got to be the important people at the top, but it's actually got to be people who understand the business well and understand the customers well and understand the product and services well so they can put into that. You need to prepare them. So before they come along to whatever format you're going to have, and typically it is some form of facilitated workshop, you are going to give them some work. And what we'll typically do is give them a series of about 30-odd questions, where they'll go through, and you'll see the questions in the book that we send out, typically the questions we take and adapt and tailor, allows them to get their head in the space and to think about it before they arrive on the day. And we'll typically send them out, answer them, send them back to whoever your facilitator is direct, so they can see where everyone's thinking is. Because their job is to shift everyone to where you want them to be and to get the best out of the group which is there. So allow them to see what actual fact the responses are, run the day with very clear outcomes sought, flat table, flat place, everyone has a fair say, and use someone who can craft what they're hearing, which means it's not just taking answers, putting up on the board, but it's taking what they're hearing and challenging and extending them. The whole bit about no Kodak moments came because they were challenged on what they were talking about. I've given them the questionnaires, they're the right questions, they've done preparation, they've come along for whatever it is, 1 day, 2 days. I've had someone external facilitating, so I'm not trying to facilitate and participate. We've led them through a discussion to a point where there's very clear and articulated outcomes. We've built a consensus. Let's go away and now create the action plans for that, do our checks, numbers and risk if we need to. Let's lay the plan on the table, and now let's each and every month put that goal achievement plan in front of the board, in front of the senior management team, and say, what have we not delivered? What have we delivered? What has shifted? What is moving? So the execution of the strategy now becomes a core piece. Can you develop a strategic plan that continuously guides your business and everyone connected with it so you outcompete everyone else? That's what you're actually trying to craft. I actually just don't want to have a control piece which says, here, go do these 3 things and come back with an action plan which tells me you're doing them. It's too remote, it's too removed. It's not going to shift your business where you need to shift it to. What I actually want is a strategic plan which is going to guide and direct direction, alignment and focus. It's going to empower them, not in a silly way, but a way which allows them to actually achieve what we need to achieve. And your strategic plan should be bringing all these things together. In our view, it's a continuous process. I've crafted the plan is there, I'm now running with it. It will often become emergent, not deliberate. Things will emerge as we go forward and we'll need to adjust and adapt. But why we exist and what value we deliver is continually growing, it's not static. And that's where the strength comes. So what we will send out to you will be the slides. I'll go back and fix up the typing mistakes and send out to you the slides which give you the format. There's a pretty old booklet which we wrote about 8 years ago. Yeah, see that booklet? I've been promising to update it. I couldn't find my copies. We just shifted from one side of the floor to the other. And in the shift from one side of the floor to the other, everything's still in boxes. So we'll send out a copy, which just gives you, under that structure, lots of questions to ask. 3 to 4 questions each section. You can use that to run a session if you want to, and that'll guide you through that. So we'll email those out. We have everyone's email addresses, don't we? Yep. On that note, at 5 minutes to, we may pause and stop. Any other questions, please come and see me and ask. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.